If I told you that researchers tracked over 800 people in Italy for 20 straight years, like analyzing every single thing they ate, and they discovered a nearly 40% drop in mortality.
Which is huge, by the way.
Right, massive. A 40% drop linked to one incredibly awkwardly named compound just hiding in everyday grocery store mushrooms. I mean, you would probably think I was selling you something, right?
Oh, for sure. Or, pitching some wildly expensive exclusive longevity clinic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I am not. Today, we're diving into something completely different, and I really think it's going to fundamentally change how you look at the produce aisle. So welcome to today's deep dive. I am thrilled you are here with us because our mission today is to, well, unpack this massive stack of clinical research.
Decades of dietary tracking, actually.
Yeah, decades of it, and some truly breathtaking molecular biology. We're looking at a naturally occurring nutrient that scientists are increasingly pointing to as, like, the closest thing we currently have to a real-life biological anti-aging cheat code.
It really is a complete paradigm shift because there's always been this ingrained expectation that the fountain of youth or, anything that genuinely slows down your biological clock, it just has to be a luxury good.
Oh, totally. We picture these pristine billionaire-funded laboratories.
Right. Or some obscure, staggeringly expensive superfood pill shipped from, I don't know, the remote corners of the globe. There's this persistent myth that actionable longevity is just financially out of reach for the average person.
Yeah, it's for the 1%.
But when we actually dig into the long-term human data, which is, what we're focusing on today, that entire narrative just flips upside down.
I love that.
We aren't looking at synthetic $1,000 pharmaceuticals here. We're exploring evidence-based, highly practical ways to slow down cellular aging using compounds our bodies already inherently recognize.
And desperately need, right?
Exactly. Things they desperately need.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand the sheer magnitude of what this nutrient does, we can't just start at the microscopic cellular level. We actually have to go back in time.
Right, the macro level.
Yeah, we need to look at the massive real-world mystery that kind of sparked this entire field of inquiry. So paint a picture for us. We're looking at data from Italy in the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly were the researchers seeing that made them stop in their tracks?
Well, what stood out in the population data was this uniquely high concentration of people experiencing exceptionally long, healthy lifespans.
Like unusually long.
Right. It's often broadly referred to as the Italian longevity phenomenon. Now, scientists, as you know, are naturally skeptical. When they see a regional cluster of longevity like that, they immediately want to know the mechanism driving it.
Sure. They want the why.
Exactly. The initial hypothesis was that it had to be tied to something specific in the regional diet, but what makes this scientific journey so compelling is how they actually went about proving it. They didn't just do a quick, 6-week survey. They launched what became known as the Brunick study.
I want to pause on the methodology here because, when we hear about nutritional studies on the news, it's usually something incredibly flimsy.
Oh, yeah. Coffee's good for you. Coffee is bad for you.
Right. It's like a study of 20 college students over a weekend, or a trial done on a handful of mice in a lab, and then the headlines just extrapolate that to all human beings.
Yeah.
That is not what happened here, is it?
Not even close. No. The Brunick study represents basically the gold standard of nutritional epidemiology. The researchers committed to tracking 829 real, everyday people.
Wow.
And they followed them for 20 years.
20 years.
2 full decades. They meticulously monitored their dietary intake, their lifestyle choices, medical histories, and ultimately, their total lifespan and cause of mortality.
Just visualize the sheer scale of that commitment for a second. Tracking the daily meals of over 800 people for 20 years. We're talking about, over 7,000 days of breakfast, lunch, and dinner logs.
It's a mountain of data.
Navigating through people, changing their habits, moving, having life events, all just to find a common underlying denominator. The patience required to not just jump to conclusions for 20 years is staggering to me.
It is, and it's exactly why this data carries so much weight. You just can't fake 20 years of human biological reality.
Yeah, you can't argue with that.
So when the researchers finally reached the end of that 2-decade period and they began crunching this absolute mountain of collected data, the revelation was stunning.
Drum roll, please.
The single nutrient that was most robustly and consistently related to lower death rates across this entire population was a compound called spermidine.
Okay, I think we just need to rip the Band-Aid off right now and clarify something for you, the listener, because that is genuinely, without a doubt, the most embarrassing name in the history of nutritional science.
It is, it's a rough one.
Let's just clear the air. Despite the incredibly unfortunate name, this compound has absolutely nothing to do with sperm.
No, it's purely a biological misnomer. The compound was first isolated from that particular fluid like centuries ago, hence the historical name. But as modern science advanced, we realized it's actually present in virtually all biological tissues.
It's just everywhere.
Exactly. Unfortunately, the original awkward name simply stuck in the literature.
It is terrible branding for a miracle nutrient. Just awful. But, okay, moving past the PR problem, let's talk about the actual impact they observed in the Brunick study. Because they didn't just find a tiny incremental benefit, did they?
They did not. The data showed that individuals who consumed ample, consistent amounts of spermidine through their diet had a nearly 40% reduction in mortality from all causes.
Okay, I really want to push back on this. Because a 40% reduction in all-cause mortality is a massive, like almost unbelievable claim.
It sounds like hyperbole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If a pharmaceutical company invented a pill that reduced your chance of dying from any cause by 40%, it would be a trillion-dollar drug. Every doctor on Earth would prescribe it tomorrow. So my immediate skepticism is, how do we know it was this specific, awkwardly named nutrient doing the heavy lifting?
That's a very fair question.
Right, like how do we know it wasn't just a classic case of the healthy user bias? Perhaps the people eating foods high in this nutrient in the 1990s were simply wealthier, or they had better health insurance, or were highly educated.
Or just happen to have better baseline genetics.
Yeah. Couldn't the presence of this compound just be a complete coincidence running parallel to a generally healthy lifestyle?
That is the exact critical lens we need to apply here. And it's precisely the same pushback the broader scientific community gave the initial researchers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The scientists behind the Brunick study, they knew they couldn't just publish a single observational cohort and claim they found the Holy Grail entirely because of the potential confounding variables you just listed.
The wealth, education, all of that.
Exactly. Those things heavily influence lifespan. So they designed a massive verification phase to stress test their own findings. They took their initial data and applied it to a completely independent, much larger group of 1,770 people.
Oh, wow.
This was known as the Sapphire Cohort Study.
So they essentially said, let's see if this holds up in a completely different population where we can control the variables.
Yes, exactly. And the way they control the variables in the Sapphire cohort is what makes the conclusions so undeniable. Through complex multivariate analysis, they mathematically leveled the playing field.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
It means they statistically controlled for income brackets, they controlled for education levels, they accounted for body mass index, baseline cardiovascular health, and even other dietary habits like total caloric intake and alcohol consumption.
So they stripped away the excuses.
Aggressively stripped them away. All the usual structural excuses for why someone might naturally live a longer life were accounted for.
They isolated the compound.
Mm.
And what happened to that 40% mortality reduction once all the privileged lifestyle factors were stripped away?
The results held up beautifully. Even after applying all of those rigorous statistical filters, the life-protecting effect of spermidine remained incredibly robust.
That's wild.
The correlation was undeniable. It wasn't the wealth, it wasn't the education, and it wasn't just a general Mediterranean diet effect. It was this specific molecule exerting a powerful biological influence on human longevity.
That is just phenomenal. Okay, so we've established that the macro-level population data is rock solid. We are looking at thousands of people over decades, verified across multiple cohorts. But now I want to zoom all the way in.
Down to the cells.
Yes, we need to move from the macroepidemiology to the microscopic reality of what is actually happening inside the human body. What exactly is this compound, and what is it doing to our cells to prevent them from dying?
Well, on a molecular level, spermidine falls into a category of molecules known as polyamines. Polyamines are fundamentally essential to all living things. They aren't some rare exotic substance. They're universally present in biology.
Right.
In fact, this specific polyamine is found in every single one of your cells. You are entirely full of it right now.
Good to know.
And its primary foundational biological function is profound. It's responsible for interacting directly with your DNA to maintain its structural stability.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
Because maintaining DNA stability sounds very important on like a textbook level, but I want to understand the how. How does a molecule floating around in my cell actually stabilize the genetic code?
It comes down to the fundamental physics of the molecules themselves. Polyamines, by their very nature, carry a positive electrical charge.
Okay.
Now, DNA, the incredibly long, complex double helix that contains all of your genetic instructions, is inherently negatively charged.
Ah, so it's a literal magnetic attraction.
Hmm.
The positive polyamine is naturally drawn to the negative DNA strand.
It's an electrostatic interaction, yes. The positively charged polyamines bind themselves right along the negatively charged backbone of the DNA.
Like magnets clicking into place.
Exactly. By binding to it, they provide crucial structural support. They act like tiny biological scaffolding, neutralizing the charge and keeping the massive, tightly coiled DNA molecule perfectly stable and protected from external stressors or copying errors.
That makes perfect sense. Let me see if I can visualize this in a more everyday way for you listening. Think of your DNA as this massive, incredibly intricate instruction manual for a highly complex machine, which is your body.
I like this.
When you were young, the manual is pristine, every page is crisp, every word is perfectly legible. The cellular machinery can read the instructions perfectly to build proteins, repair tissues, and keep the engine running smoothly. But as you age, if you don't take care of that manual, pages get crumpled,
We get torn, yeah.
the ink gets smudged by environmental damage or just the wear and tear of time.
And that crumpled, unreadable paper is a fantastic representation of what we call cellular damage.
So in this analogy, the positive charge of the spermidine binding to the DNA is basically like a protective lamination process.
Oh, that's good.
It coats the pages. It keeps the manual perfectly flat, pristine, and structurally sound, so the cellular machinery can just keep reading the instructions clearly year after year without making mistakes.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The lamination keeps the instructions legible. Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture of how the human body ages, the importance of this lamination becomes critical.
Because it doesn't last forever.
Right. When we're young and developing, our internal natural production of spermidine is very high. Our cells are heavily laminated, so to speak. But as we age, our internal production slowly but steadily drops.
The body just stops laminating the pages.
Yes. And when those natural levels fall, the stability of our genetic material is compromised. The DNA becomes vulnerable. It starts to accumulate those tears and smudges you mentioned.
And then what happens?
When the DNA loses its stability, the cells stop functioning optimally. They start making errors. And most importantly, they start producing cellular waste.
Cellular waste, what does that actually look like inside the body, like physically?
It takes the form of misfolded proteins, damaged organelles, and oxidized lipids. It's literally microscopic garbage.
Yeah.
When the DNA isn't stable, the cell's ability to process and clear out this garbage breaks down. So the cellular junk just begins to pile up inside your tissues. And this is the crucial takeaway, that gradual accumulation of cellular junk is the root biological cause of what you and I recognize as aging.
Wait, really? So aging isn't just some abstract ticking clock in the background? It is a physical pileup of trash inside our cells.
It's the underlying mechanical mechanism behind almost everything we associate with getting older. The wrinkles on your skin, that's cellular junk compromising the collagen matrix.
Oh, wow.
The memory problems, that's junk accumulating in the neurons. The stiffening of the arteries and heart issues, that is cellular waste impairing cardiovascular tissue function.
Which makes the solution incredibly empowering when you think about it. The biological mechanism isn't set in stone. By simply introducing more of this specific, positively charged polyamine back into our bodies as we age, we can actively prevent this specific pileup.
Exactly.
We can step back in and relaminate the manual, stabilizing the DNA and stopping the trash from accumulating in the first place.
And you know, that alone would make this an absolute superstar nutrient. Merely acting as a passive shield to protect DNA integrity is a massive biological victory. But the clinical data reveals that this compound goes much, much further than that.
There's more.
Yes, it doesn't just passively protect the cells. It actively commands them to rejuvenate.
Okay, this is where we need to dive into the truly cutting-edge part of the molecular biology. We're moving from a passive shield to an active director. How exactly is it commanding the cells to rejuvenate?
Beyond stabilizing the DNA, spermidine has the unique ability to interact with a highly specific, complex signaling network inside the body known as the MTO pathway.
The MTR pathway. Let's make sure we have this exactly right, because this is a massive buzzword in longevity science right now. MTOR stands for mammalian target of rapamycin. Correct.
That is correct. It's a critically important protein complex that functions as the central nutrient sensor in our cells.
I have to admit, I've always found the concept of MTR a bit confusing. How does a protein complex sense nutrients, and why does that even matter for aging?
Think of the MTR pathway as the ultimate cellular manager, or like the general contractor on the construction site of your body.
Okay, I'm with you.
Its entire job is to constantly monitor the environment to see how many resources, how much food, protein, and energy are currently available. When you eat a big meal, your insulin spikes, amino acids flood your system, and the mTOR pathway senses all of this abundance. It turns on.
And when the contractor sees a massive pile of building materials, what does it do?
It commands the cells to grow. It says, we have plenty of resources, let's build new muscle, let's divide cells, let's expand. That is a highly anabolic state.
Which sounds good, right?
Growth is vital when we're young or when we're actively trying to build muscle, but chronic, constant growth, constantly having mTOR turned on is actually very pro-aging.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like constantly running a factory at maximum capacity without ever shutting down for maintenance. Eventually, the machinery just burns out.
So if turning MTR on causes growth and accelerates aging, what happens when it turns off?
Well, when you stop eating, when you fast or restrict calories, the mTOR pathway senses the lack of incoming resources. The contractor realizes the building materials have dried up, so it turns off.
Okay.
And when mTOR is suppressed, it triggers a completely different cellular command. It flips the switch from growth to repair and recycle.
The factory shuts down the assembly line and brings in the janitorial staff.
Exactly. This state of repair is a biological process called autophagy. Auto meaning self, and phagy meaning eating.
Self-easing.
The cells literally begin to eat themselves. But they don't eat the healthy parts. They aggressively hunt down and consume all of that accumulated cellular junk we talked about earlier.
The misfolded proteins, the smudged pages.
Exactly. The damaged organelles, they break down the microscopic garbage and recycle it for basic energy, entirely cleaning house in the process.
That is fascinating. So the body is so incredibly efficient that when it doesn't have external food coming in, it just looks around the cell, finds the trash that's causing us to age, and burns it for fuel.
Yes. Autophagy is the ultimate anti-aging mechanism. It results in significantly faster healing, deeply clean tissues, and a vastly slower overall aging process.
Which explains a lot about fasting.
Right. This is why scientists have known for decades that severely restricting calories, chronic fasting, extends the lifespan of almost every organism we have ever tested, from yeast to mice to primates.
But I mean, let's be totally honest with you, the listener, and with ourselves. Sticking to a severe, lifelong caloric restriction diet sounds absolutely miserable.
It does.
Denying yourself adequate food, ignoring your hunger cues every single day for decades. That is just not a sustainable or enjoyable lifestyle for the vast majority of the human population.
It's incredibly difficult to maintain psychologically, socially, and even physically. Chronic caloric restriction can lead to muscle loss, bone density issues, and a severely suppressed immune system if it's not managed perfectly. The cure can sometimes feel worse than the disease.
Which brings us to the massive cheat code. The researchers refer to Spermidine as a caloric restriction mimetic. If I'm understanding this correctly, it mimics the biological effects of starvation without the actual starvation part.
It's a profound biological hack. Spermidine directly interacts with the mTOR pathway and essentially tricks the nutrient sensor.
Tricks it how?
It suppresses mTOR activity even when you are eating a normal diet. It forces the cellular contractor to flip the switch into the repair and recycle mode, triggering massive systemic autophagy.
So wait, you're telling me I can eat a reasonable, healthy amount of food, avoid the misery of lifelong fasting, and still get the exact same cellular cleanup and longevity benefits just by having enough of this polyamine in my system?
That is exactly what the data strongly suggests. It hacks the system, giving you the cellular benefits of eating less without having to chronically starve yourself. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of modern medicine, this represents an absolute earthquake in how we approach human health. Because for a century, the standard medical model has been entirely reactive. We wait for diseases to develop.
Right.
We wait for the arteries to stiffen, for the heart issues to manifest, or for the memory loss to become so apparent that it affects daily life. And then we step in and try to prescribe a drug to treat the symptoms. We just manage the decline.
We're just playing an endless, expensive game of whack-a-mole with chronic diseases.
Yes. But utilizing compounds like spermidine completely flips that model from reactive to deeply proactive. It allows us to treat and prevent the aging process itself at the foundational cellular level.
By keeping the house clean.
By stabilizing the DNA and constantly running that autophagy cleanup crew, we're stopping the cellular breakdown before the disease ever has a chance to take root. We're targeting the root cause, not the downstream symptoms.
Okay, this sounds almost too perfect. If this polyamine is so miraculous for our cells, if it naturally occurs in our biology, actively prevents aging by clearing out junk, and acts as a fasting mimetic, then I have a very logical question that we need to address.
Let's hear it.
Why are we seeing so much accelerated aging in modern society? Like, why are chronic age-related diseases skyrocketing globally? If our bodies inherently know how to do this naturally, and this compound exists in nature, why aren't our bodies just maintaining this pristine state?
It's a critical question, and exploring the answer reveals a very stark, very modern reality. The truth is that the vast majority of people today are highly deficient in spermidine.
Oh, yeah.
Highly deficient. And they're becoming deficient right at the exact moment in their life cycle when they need it the most to combat age-related cellular damage. We are suffering from a systemic failure that researchers characterize as a double punch deficit.
A double punch deficit. Okay, let's break that down. What is the first punch hitting us?
The first punch comes entirely from our external environment, specifically the modern industrialized diet.
Ah, of course.
Over the last 50 years, our global food supply chain has radically shifted. We've moved away from traditional whole food agriculture and now rely heavily, almost exclusively in many populations, on ultra-processed foods and highly refined grains.
So it's a manufacturing issue.
Fundamentally, yes. The intense industrial manufacturing processes used to create shelf-stable, hyper-palatable foods, they completely strip away the natural, complex nutrient profiles of the raw ingredients.
I just process it all out.
Everything. The outer layers of grains, the skins of vegetables, the diverse fiber structures, all of that is removed. As a result, the modern diet is entirely devoid of the foods that naturally contain meaningful, therapeutic amounts of spermidine.
We've basically engineered the longevity molecule right out of our daily meals. So our external supply chain has been cut off by the processed food industry. That's punch number one. What's the second punch?
The second punch comes from within, and it has to do with your aging gut.
The microbiome.
Yes, the human gut microbiome, the trillions of symbiotic bacteria living in your digestive tract. It isn't just there to help you digest lunch. It actually acts as an incredibly complex internal manufacturing plant.
Interesting.
When you're young and healthy, specific strains of bacteria in your microbiome naturally synthesize a significant amount of spermidine for you, absorbing it directly into your bloodstream.
Wait, so we have our own internal factory producing this stuff?
We do. But as we age, a process called immunosenescence begins, and the diversity and overall health of that microbiome steadily decline.
So the factory breaks down.
The environment in the gut changes. The beneficial polyamine-producing bacteria get crowded out or simply die off. The internal factory becomes sluggish, inefficient, and eventually shuts down production almost entirely.
Let me synthesize this because this is a tragic biological irony. As we age, our cells are accumulating more garbage and desperately need this compound to trigger autophagy and clean up the mess.
Right.
But right when demand is at its absolute highest, we are essentially starving our internal gut factories of the raw materials they need to function, while simultaneously refusing to import the finished goods from our external diet.
That is a perfect summary of the systemic failure. We are cutting the supply lines on both fronts. We eat vastly less of it than our ancestors did, and our aging bodies manufacture vastly less of it. The gap between what our cells need to remain stable and what they're actually receiving grows wider every single year.
And what makes this doubly frustrating is that almost no one knows about it. I mean, the average person has never even heard the name of this nutrient.
No, not at all.
They don't know what a polyamine is, they don't understand the MTRR pathway, and they certainly don't understand how much they need to eat to reverse this double punch deficit and achieve the life-extending benefits that were so clearly documented in those European cohort studies.
It remains a massive blind spot in mainstream public health education, unfortunately.
Which is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today.
Sure.
We have to move from the grim reality of these systemic dietary deficiencies to the highly actionable, empowering part of this conversation.
The solution.
Yes, how do you, the person listening to this right now, driving in your car or making breakfast, actually step in and fix this deficit? And the most exciting part is you don't need a doctor's prescription. You don't need a billionaire's bank account. You just need to know exactly what to look for the next time you walk into your local grocery store.
The solution is entirely manageable through intentional, everyday dietary choices.
So let's build the ultimate evidence-based anti-aging grocery list right now. Based on the data, the foods hiding the absolute highest concentrations of this compound are, well, they're surprisingly common. Number one on the list, heavily featured in the research. Mushrooms.
Specifically, shiitake mushrooms.
Right. Shiitake mushrooms are an absolute biological powerhouse of spermidine.
They really are. Mushrooms are fantastic because their cellular structure naturally concentrates polyamines.
Good to know. Then you have whole grains. But we need to be specific here. We're talking about the densely nutritious parts of the grain that usually get thrown away, right? Wheat germ, rice bran, and traditional unprocessed oats.
Exactly.
Moving down the list, soybeans are also a fantastic source, particularly when they're fermented, along with common green vegetables like broccoli, green peas, and green beans.
Those are all excellent, highly bioavailable sources, but there is a crucial caveat here that we really must address, especially when we talk about the grain category.
Okay, what's that?
The modern food industry is incredibly deceptive. You must aggressively stay away from grains that are overly processed, even if they have healthy-sounding marketing on the box.
This is a vital point, because when you walk down the cereal aisle, the packaging is just screaming at you, made with whole grains or heart healthy. But what is actually inside the box?
Most of what you see in that aisle has been intensely milled and stripped of its natural nutrient profile, including all the polyamines. To make up for this, the manufacturers artificially fortify the cereal with synthetic vitamins, like added folic acid or synthetic B vitamins, just so they can legally claim it's nutritious.
It's a total chemical illusion of health.
It is. The data is very clear on this. You absolutely cannot get the cellular longevity benefits we're discussing today from a box of sugary, refined cereal, no matter what the label claims. The focus must remain strictly on maintaining a diverse variety of true, whole, structurally intact foods. The wheat germ needs to look like wheat germ, not a brightly colored puff.
So if you want the MTOR hacking benefits, stick to the perimeter of the grocery store. That covers the dietary intake, the importing of the goods to fix the first punch of the deficit. But what about the internal factory? How do we fix the gut production side and get our microbiome back online?
To repair and optimize the internal factory, you have to actively feed the workers.
Makes sense.
You need to provide the specific strains of bacteria with the environment and the raw materials they require to thrive and synthesize polyamines on their own. This requires a two-pronged approach: prebiotics and probiotics.
Prebiotics being the food for the bacteria.
Yes. Prebiotic fibers act as the fertilizer for the microbiome. This comes from fibrous vegetables, alliums like garlic and onions, and the structural fibers in those whole grains we mentioned.
Okay.
But equally important are the probiotics introducing live, beneficial bacteria directly into the system. And for this, the research heavily points toward naturally fermented foods as being incredibly effective.
We're talking about things like traditional kimchi, raw sauerkraut, natto, or kefir.
Precisely. The ancient practice of fermentation actually multiplies the polyamine content in the food itself while simultaneously delivering millions of live microbes to your digestive tract. Regularly eating a small amount of kimchi or raw sauerkraut helps rebuild the bacterial diversity in your aging gut, effectively turning the internal spermidine manufacturing plant back on.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this into a practical morning routine. What does this actually mean for the listener waking up on a Tuesday morning? We have the grocery list, shiitake mushrooms, wheat germ, broccoli, sauerkraut. But how much do we actually need to consume to move the biological needle? What is the mathematical dosage of longevity here?
Well, we don't have to guess at the dosage. The researchers actually quantified this by deeply analyzing the dietary logs of the longest living individuals in the Brunnich study.
Okay, give us the numbers.
To achieve that optimal 40% mortality reducing benefit, you need to hit a highly specific daily intake. In strict scientific metrics, the target is roughly 80 to 123 micromoles of spermidine per day.
The researchers pinned it at 80 to 123 micromoles, which, unless you happen to be a biochemist doing math at the breakfast table, means absolutely nothing to most of us. Let's translate that abstract metric for the grocery store. What does that equal in milligrams?
Fair point. Translated to mass, you are aiming for roughly 12 to 18 milligrams of dietary spermidine per day.
12 to 18 milligrams. Honestly, that does not sound like a massive mountain of food. It sounds very achievable.
Yeah.
What does 12 to 18 milligrams actually look like physically sitting on a dinner plate?
It's surprisingly attainable, which is why this is such an empowering deep dive. To hit that optimal 12 to 18 milligram range, you do not need to eat a bucket of broccoli. You only need to consume about 1 single cup of cooked shiitake mushrooms a day. or if you prefer grains, about 2 tablespoons of raw wheat germ.
2 tablespoons of wheat germ. That is incredibly easy. You could literally just drop 2 tablespoons of wheat germ into your morning protein smoothie, blend it up, and you wouldn't even taste it.
Exactly.
Or you could easily saute a side of shiitake mushrooms with your dinner. You could hit the longevity target before you even leave the house in the morning.
That's the beauty of this intervention. It doesn't require a radical, miserable, socially isolating dietary overhaul. You don't have to restrict your calories and starve. It simply requires a very small amount of intentional eating. You just have to be aware of the compound, understand its power, and make sure you're consistently including those specific nutrient-dense foods in your daily rotation.
Now, I know exactly what some people listening right now are thinking, especially if they're driving and can't easily cook a cup of mushrooms. They're thinking, okay, 12 milligrams. I have Amazon on my phone. I'm just going to buy a synthesized Spermidine supplement pill, take it with my morning coffee, and completely bypass the grocery store.
The supplement route.
Yeah, what does the actual clinical science say about skipping the whole foods and just taking this compound in an isolated pill form?
This is a highly debated, very active topic in longevity circles right now. The supplement industry is moving incredibly fast, but here's what we know about the foundational biology. Obtaining this polyamine naturally through whole foods currently holds a massive, undeniable biological advantage.
Okay, why is that?
It comes down to a concept called bioavailability.
Bioavailability, meaning how much of the substance actually makes it into your bloodstream versus how much just gets flushed down the toilet.
Exactly. When you consume this compound within its natural food matrix, say, chewing a shiitake mushroom, your body inherently recognizes it. The digestive system is perfectly evolved to break down that specific cellular structure. Because of this, the body successfully absorbs up to 80% of the spermidine you eat from whole foods. It seamlessly enters the bloodstream and gets delivered to the cells.
So the body knows exactly what a mushroom is and what to do with it. But a pill is different.
A pill is an isolated, highly concentrated extract, often missing the cofactors that aid in digestion. When you take an isolated synthetic pill, a significant portion of it may simply pass right through your digestive tract as expensive waste.
Right.
Now, to be fair, there are companies rapidly developing sophisticated spermidine supplements, and researchers are currently running several human clinical trials to nail down the exact optimal doses and delivery mechanisms in a concentrated form.
So the science is actively trying to catch up to the convenience factor.
It is. But as of right now, the jury is still very much out on whether isolated pills are as biologically effective at triggering MTOR suppression and autophagy as getting the compound directly from the complex synergistic matrix of traditional foods.
There is always something profound about the whole food that seems to work better than the sum of its parts. The fiber feeding the gut microbiome, the other trace minerals, the antioxidants, they all work together in a symphony that a single isolated pill just can't replicate yet.
They absolutely do. The holistic approach of eating the actual food addresses both sides of the double punch deficit simultaneously. It gives you the polyamines directly, and the fiber feeds the internal gut factory. Right now, focusing on the diet is the most robust, evidence-based path forward.
This has been such a wild, deeply fascinating journey today. Let's just take a breath and recap the sheer scope of the science we've covered. We started with a wildly unfortunate, awkwardly named molecule, and a massive 20-year epidemiological mystery surrounding the exceptionally long, healthy lifespans of people in 1990s Italy.
We stripped away the confounding variables to reveal a genuine biological phenomenon.
We did. We learned how this exact same positively charged molecule acts like a protective lamination, physically binding to and stabilizing our negatively charged DNA, preventing the disastrous pileup of cellular garbage that physically causes wrinkles, memory loss, and cardiovascular disease.
We explored how it actively manipulates the MTOR pathway.
Right. We discovered how it essentially acts as a biological cheat code, tricking the nutrient sensor to hack the fasting pathway. It flips the switch from growth to repair, triggering massive cellular cleanup through autophagy without the misery of starvation. And ultimately, we learned that reclaiming this incredible cellular power doesn't require millions of dollars or a futuristic laboratory.
Not at all.
It just requires simple, intentional, everyday grocery store swaps to fix a modern dietary deficit. Mushrooms, wheat germ, sauerkraut.
It represents a profound psychological shift. It moves us away from feeling helpless and reactive about the aging process to realizing that you have genuine, daily, actionable control over your cellular health.
So we always like to leave you with something actionable. Here is the specific practical challenge we are drawing from the clinical data, and I am passing it directly to you, the listener, right now.
Yeah.
Try adding just one of these spermidine-rich foods to your daily routine this week.
Just one.
Just one simple swap. Sauté a cup of shiitake mushrooms and add them to your dinner pasta. Throw 2 tablespoons of raw wheat germ into your morning protein smoothie. Have a small scoop of fermented kimchi with your lunch. The data reminds us that you do not need a PhD in molecular biology to apply this knowledge and protect your DNA. You just need the desire to be intentional and to show up for your cellular health every single day.
That daily consistency is exactly where the long-term biological magic happens. And as we wrap up, absorbing all this data really makes you pause and consider the much broader implications of nutritional science.
Oh, for sure.
Think about it. If a single, awkwardly named, largely ignored molecule hiding inside a standard, everyday shiitake mushroom has the proven ability to literally mimic the cellular benefits of extreme starvation. If it can physically stabilize our underlying genetic code, trigger autophagy, and significantly lower all-cause mortality across decades of rigorously tracked human life, what other wildly powerful longevity-boosting compounds are currently hiding in plain sight in our grocery store produce aisles, just waiting for the next 20-year cohort study to finally uncover them?
Wow.
Could the ultimate futuristic anti-aging cocktail that billionaires are desperately searching for eventually turn out to be nothing more than a highly specific, scientifically optimized salad?
That is a deeply fascinating thought to leave on. The answers might already be sitting right there in our kitchens. Keep laminating that DNA manual, everyone. Eat your mushrooms, feed your microbiome, and we will see you on the next deep dive.